Today we're checking out more of our friend, the Fat Electrician.
What?
His video on 450 Marines versus the Imperial Japanese Navy on Wake Island.
Never heard about this.
So
I feel like that's the common theme, which is so unfortunate. It's just like, what?
Where does this come from?
Good on him for doing the research, dude. Oh man, it's so important.
Also, we're looking at Sabaton history on ETG. That's linked in the description too. So I feel like this is our new direction as a channel, is stuff you didn't learn in school.
I'm fine with that. I think that this kind of stuff is the most interesting, dude.
More interesting.
How did we overlook this stuff? It's epic. So
because U.S. education. That's why.
Yeah.
Anyway,
pretty much.
You ready?
Let's do it.
3, 2.
During World War II, the Japanese military used to think that the Marines were all recruited from prisons and insane asylums, which, to be honest, it's always made sense to me, but after researching for this video, it's starting to make dollars. Today,
It's starting to make dollars? Is that what he's doing?
Yeah, I love that. It's it made sense to me. It made sense to me, but what do you say? And now it's starting to make dollars. Like, okay.
Yo, that took me a second.
It's too early. It's too early for this.
It's 10:44 a.m. at the time of this recording.
God.
Woo!
We're talking about the first time that the United States Marine Corps would come toe-to-toe with the Japanese military. Ladies and gentlemen, Wake Island, a small coral atoll 2,000 miles west of Hawaii, closer to Japan than it was to America, and highly sought after by the Japanese to be a forward operating base for World War II. The only problem with that was, it was currently held by the Americans. 450 Marine Corps artillerymen and 1,200 civilian construction workers, as well as 70 Navy corpsmen. In this context, for the layman, if you don't know, Navy corpsman is a fancy word for Marine Corps medic, aka Doc. And they didn't have much to defend the island with, but they did have 6 5-inch coastal artillery guns that were actually taken from America's first ever battleship, the original USS Texas from the 1800s. They also had 12 3-inch anti-aircraft guns, 18 M2 Browning machine guns, 30 Browning 30 caliber machine guns, as well as 12 Grumman F4F Wildcat fighters. In regards to time, Wake Island is 22 hours ahead of Hawaii, meaning that from their perspective, Pearl Harbor would take place on December 8th, 1941. An hour after the attack on Pearl Harbor had ended, Wake would receive a transmission saying that Pearl Harbor had occurred and that they needed to be prepared. 2 hours after that, 27 Japanese bombers would conduct an air raid on Wake Island, destroying 8 of their 12 F4F Wildcat fighters before they even left the airstrip. At this point, 400 civilian construction workers would volunteer to help fight if it came to that, and the Marines began training them on how to operate machine guns immediately, while also fortifying fighting positions. Wake Island would then be bombed again on the 9th, and on December 11th, 1941, an entire Japanese naval detachment would arrive at Wake Island, and the battle for Wake would officially begin. As the Marines, the Navy corpsmen, and the construction workers rushed to their battle stations, they would see that they were incredibly outmanned and outgunned. The Japanese had brought with them 3 light cruisers, 6 destroyers, 3 submarines, 1 submarine tender, 2 PT boats, and 2 amphibious landing ships equipped with 450 special naval landing forces of the Japanese, which is essentially the Japanese equivalent of Marines. As the entire
we were outnumbered, like, big time.
Wow. So they wanted to overwhelm the island with force, which I mean, because there's no failure. You need to take that island, especially if you're Japan.
Right. They would rather, unalive themselves than admit that they lost.
Yeah, well, it's just strategic. That hinges everything.
Yeah.
Like, you need that. Like, there is no failure. Take the effing island.
Yeah, failure is not an option.
No.
Japanese naval detachment advanced closer and closer to the island, they would finally come within striking distance of the Marine artillery, 12,000 yards. Despite that, and much to the confusion of the Marines, they were all ordered to hold their fire, which made absolutely no sense to them. These men could hit bullseyes at 12,000 yards. These guys would put a fucking 5-inch shell through a bedroom window if they wanted to. Why on earth are they being told to hold their fire? But the man in charge of the Marines, Commander Devereaux, realized that the Japanese artillery on the ships actually outranged the Marine artillery, and they weren't firing yet. And this must mean that the Japanese thought that their air raids had disabled all of the Marine defenses on the island, which was not true at all, because in reality, the only thing they had taken out was the original 8 Wildcats from day one. So under the command of Major Devereaux, the Marines would continue to hold their fire and play possum as the entire detachment advanced closer and closer. 10,000 yards, 8,000 yards, 6,000 yards. 4,000 yards, which as far as a Marine artilleryman is concerned, is point blank fucking range. If they got any closer, these Marines were going to try to put a bayonet on this 5-inch gun, okay? The Marines would finally be given the order to open fire, and they would open fire with everything they had and put as many shells downrange as they possibly could, taking the Japanese completely off guard and hitting almost all of their ships with effective fire. In a matter of minutes, they were able to sink one of the destroyers by hitting it twice in its magazine. The destroyer Hayate would be sunk in 12 minutes. And I cannot stress to you what a big deal this is. At this
That's insane.
Hey, man. That's it's, what is it? Like, you don't open fire until you know you got the shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Don't, and I love that, man. You bring them in. Bring them all the way in.
Yeah, 4,000 yards.
And then light them up, because you know that it's like, what they brought. What they brought. It's right there in front of you. So it's like, holy crap, you gotta wait. And that must have been the most excruciating, I guess, 30, 40 minutes of their life, just waiting, holding fire.
Yeah,
just know that once you start shooting, you guys just started, like, it popped off.
Yeah,
and there's not going to be quiet for a very, very, very long time.
Yeah. That silence right before must have been deafening.
Man. Oh.
At this point in time, Japan has effectively attacked Pearl Harbor and 27 other locations in the Pacific, and they have never lost a single naval vessel. And it took the Marine artillerymen 12 minutes to put one completely under the waterline. Panicking and not knowing what to do, the Japanese naval detachment would turn and retreat. And it is at this point that they would realize that they made a fatal flaw in their attack strategy, because they didn't bring a carrier and they brought no planes for air support. Cue this man, Henry Elrod, aka Hammer and Hank, and one of the first main characters that would ever enter the battlefield in World War II on America's behalf. Himself and the other 3 Grumman Wildcat fighters would take off into the sky. They would realize that the Japanese naval detachment came with no carrier and no airplanes overhead. Woo! And let's face it, Japanese AA guns might as well be crewed by fucking stormtroopers, because they can't hit shit. So the 4 Wildcat pilots take off and proceed to kick the entire naval detachment in the ass on the way out, as they strafe their decks with machine gun fire and drop 100-pound bombs on their decks. Now, a 100-pound bomb and machine gun fire absolutely should never be able to sink a major naval vessel, like ever. Good old Hammer and Hank, though, managed to park one of those 100-pound bombs directly on top of the depth charges on top of the deck of the destroyer Kisarage, setting off a chain reaction that would sink the entire naval vessel. Which is literally the equivalent of killing a grown-ass man with a BB gun, but somehow he pulled it off anyways. Which I...
Wow. I love that, dude.
What was that ship made out of? Paper mache?
Well, I mean, dude, it's just a depth charge, man. Those are things they drop to the bottom of the ocean and destroy subs. That's a highly explosive thing. Like, that's what you see, like, in these naval conflict, or the air and sea conflicts. Man, if you hit the magazine weld, that's where all the ammo's stored. So you hit that, kaboom. You hit where they have the depth charges, kaboom.
Okay.
It's like lighting a firecracker inside someone's closed hand.
Wow.
That's luck. That is luck. That is absolutely badass luck. Wow.
They hit the target.
So these ragtag group of people, I'm not calling Marines ragtag. I respect them, but god damn it, I would be so pissed. This little island of like a couple, 1,000 Marines, but more civilians, is kicking ass. 2 ships sunk, dude. That's nuts.
Yeah, this is all like new to me, because, like, I mean, you've shown me a few things. Like, I have no reference point of it, but dadgum, this is wow.
Yeah,
this is wow. Is what this is.
It's fucking crazy, dude.
Oh, wow.
I mean, to be fair, is just standard behavior for the Marine Corps at this point. Now, the smoke settles from the battle, and they have to figure out what all happened, because, you know, there's a lot of moving parts. Come to find out, the only thing that the Marines lost, 2 of the planes were so damaged that they weren't going to be flyable anymore, so now they're only down to 2 Grumman Wildcats, and only 5 people had been injured. Nobody died on the American side. Japan, on the other hand, had lost 2 destroyers, a submarine, and a suspected 300-plus men. Needless to say, the Japanese are fucking pissed and embarrassed about this entire thing. Which, I mean, they kind of have a right to be upset too. I mean, this was the first 2 ships they've had sunk during World War II. This was the first tactical loss they've had. And this is the only successful amphibious landing defense using coastal artillery ever in all of World War II. They straight up kind of got their asses whooped. And because they're so upset, they pretty much immediately sent out another air raid from the Marshall Islands and bombed Wake Island again. And they continued to bomb Wake Island every day for the next 10 days. Thankfully, they still didn't manage to hit a whole lot. Total stormtrooper energy, just misses every single time. And during this 10 days, the American people would find out that 450 Marines and a bunch of construction workers stood up to the Japanese Navy and told them to get fucked. And this became the silver lining for the catastrophe that was Pearl Harbor. Wake Island.
Wow. So the Japanese basically got mad and just threw everything at it. No strategy at all. Just pride.
Yep.
The pride was hurt. They couldn't handle it.
They were throwing a hissy fit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, how important was that little standoff after Pearl Harbor? You know, because it took us a little bit to like retaliate. You know, so this was like a big moment, in national pride right here. So that's crazy, man. That little, and I've never heard about this. You would think that was like Pearl Harbor and Wake Island. They should be taught hand in hand, like one after the other. But never heard about Wake Island.
Oh well,
it's crazy.
Oh well.
Island was a shining example that the American public looked to and said, if those 450 dudes were able to accomplish that when they weren't ready, imagine what we're going to be able to do once we actually start trying. This victory, unfortunately, would be short-lived because it is now a race between Japan and America to see who can get reinforcements to Wake Island first. The problem with that is the Japanese reinforcements are coming from all their other successful attack missions, including Pearl Harbor, so they have a huge head start on the Americans, so obviously they get all of their ships there first. So the Marines call up the Navy chain of command and are like, hey, there's a bunch of more Japanese ships here, including some aircraft carriers. Hurry up. At which point, the United States Navy, or maybe not the Navy, but the government, somebody at a high level decides that, well, we don't want to lose any more ships, so we're just going to consider all of Wake Island collateral damage, and we're going to leave all of you there to die.
Really?
I wish I was joking. So the first battle for Wake Island was on December 11th. They then got bombed every day for 10 days straight. It is now December 22nd. They have all been left there to die, except these are United States Marines, so fuck it, we're still gonna fight anyways, because that's just how they get down. So December 22nd, 1941, the second battle for Wake Island is about to kick off. In the red, white, and blue corner, we have 450 Marine artillerymen, 400 construction workers, and 70 Navy corpsmen, going toe-to-toe with a reinforced Japanese Navy of 3 light cruisers, 6 destroyers, 2 PT boats, 2 amphibious landing vehicles, a bunch of more amphibious landing soldiers, 1 submarine tender, 2 submarines, 4 heavy cruisers, 2 mine layers, and 2 aircraft carriers returning from Pearl Harbor. The IJN hear you, and the IJN see you. Apparently the IJN smell you and taste you were fucking busy. And now to the Marine Corps' surprise, the entire...
Oh my god. They just left him there. For... How was it? December 8th, December 22nd?
They're like, good luck. Oh, that's a gut punch right there.
Yeah.
That's a gut punch right there, man. You leave me on an island to die. Like, you better fucking try. You better at least send your reinforcements later to pick up my body, you know, or something. Jeez, man.
At the time, they were the friend that you text to let you know where the body is.
Yeah. I mean, they were so far. I guess. Yeah. No, like they said, the Japanese were already headed that way.
Yeah.
So the Navy was just like, they were still trying to gather what the hell just happened, coordinate a response, and Wake Island didn't fit in the plans, and they didn't want to lose any more boats. You can't blame them. Can't blame them. We needed those boats later on, but my God, at what cost?
Right.
Naval detachment refuses to get anywhere near this island, not willing to come within 12,000 yards because they don't want to get shot up by accurate Marine artillery fire again. So instead, what they do is they send out their 2 amphibious landing ships with 900 soldiers on them, and they deploy every single plane that their aircraft carriers have. The 2 remaining Marine Corps Wildcat fighters are about to go toe-to-toe with 50 Japanese aircraft. And somehow, those 2 badass Marine aviators managed to shoot down 21 Japanese planes, one of which was the bomber of Bombardier Norobu Kanai, the man that was credited with sinking the USS Arizona. This would be considered the first ever revenge for Pearl Harbor. The remaining Japanese planes then proceeded to bomb and strafe the island with machine gun fire. They didn't really do a whole lot of damage, but one thing they did take out was the communication lines leaving the command bunker where Major Devereaux was. And nobody knew that that had happened, so Major Devereaux's inside of his bunker giving orders, but nobody's hearing them. So when the 900 Japanese Special Naval Landing Forces landed on the beach and they weren't given any orders, the Marines are kind of like, what are we doing? What's the play? No orders came through, so they're gonna do what Marines do best, be default aggressive and go fuck shit up. Given a lack of instruction, they will resort to destruction every single time. The Marines on their own accord decide that they are going to fix bayonets, leave the machine guns and fortified fighting positions with the civilians that they trained, and they are gonna go meet a 2-to-1 battle against the Japanese Special Landing Forces on the beach in the middle of bumfuck nowhere in the Pacific. One of these 2 groups is the best amphibious fighting force on Earth, and they are about to figure it out right now. For the next 11...
Wow. That's insane.
Like, can you... Okay. The Marines are just built differently. I knew that. That's just science. Look in the science books. It's science.
Yeah.
But, like, you leave the machine gun nest with the civilians, so you can go basically kebab motherfuckers. Like, hey, here we go. Put your knife on your weapon, because we're about to get it bloody. Damn. Hey, what about the machine guns? Oh, we got the civilians watching our backs.
Wow. By any means necessary.
That is terrifying, man. Oh my God.
That's why you make friends with a Marine. They will get you out of any situation.
I'll trust a gun in the hands of a civilian before I trust the gun in the hands of an officer any day. Man, it's just so badass. Like the psychological leap that must have been made collectively.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's like machine guns, the fortified positions, civilians. Right? Very brave thing to do.
Yeah.
We're the soldiers, we're the Marines. We're gonna take care of some shit.
Man.
11 hours, the Marine Corps and the Japanese Special Landing Forces would engage in close combat, and not only were the Marines successful at defending, they would begin launching counterattacks, and these counterattacks would fracture the enemy line, sending small groups of enemy soldiers all over the island. It is at this point, after like 11 hours, Commander Devereaux finally comes out of his fucking bunker after not hearing from anyone this entire time, and in his head, he's thinking all of the positions that had radios must have been overrun. That's why they're not responding to me, so he's anticipating that they're losing. And as soon as he walks out of the bunker, he sees Japanese flags all over the island. And he assumes that the flags had been hoisted because the Japanese were victorious. But that's not what was happening. What he was seeing was Japanese good luck flags, which was a Japanese tradition in World War II, where the Japanese soldiers would have their friends and family sign a Japanese flag, and they would hang it on their rifle when they went into battle for good luck. That is what he was seeing, not flags hoisted in victory, because his Marines were kicking their fucking ass. But he didn't know that, so he proceeded to go around the island and force his men to surrender. Right off the bat, huge problem. The Japanese at this point in time weren't real big on the whole taking prisoners thing. They still very much believed in the Bushido Code of Honor, and if you surrendered on the battlefield, you lost that honor, and as far as they're concerned, if you didn't have your honor, you deserved to die. So it's already not looking that great, and it would become even worse once the fog of the battle finally lifted, and everybody began to look around and realize there's a distinct lack of dead Americans. Plenty of dead people, not many Americans.
Wow. The breakdown in communication, that's the result of it. It becomes a Blackadder plan.
Man, you know what? As someone that was enlisted, if I knew that the lines were severed, the communication wasn't disseminating, I would have sent a civilian run up and lock the commander in the effing bunker. Don't let him come out. Just keep him there. Let us handle our shit.
Yeah.
Let us handle our shit.
Yeah, y'all know what to do.
Yeah, it's or inform them. Oh my god! But you know what though? How could you? Every person counted. Every person mattered, and that's just such a such a top brass thing to do. Oh, I see Japanese flags. We're losing. We surrender. Like, get out of here, man.
Just that little difference. Like, are there signatures on it? That's your telltale sign. But they didn't know that.
I didn't know that. I mean, still, it's just like, you think that the commander would just be like, we're going to fight to the fucking death. I know there's no relief coming. And we don't want to be prisoners of war in this conflict. So you fight to the fucking death.
Hell yeah.
Because over the last 11 hours, the Japanese landing forces had suffered 600 casualties, and the Americans had only lost 52 Marines and 70 construction workers. I say only, that's still a lot. It's way too many. It's tragic. I'm not trying to diminish that in any way. I'm simply trying to explain it was an extremely lopsided battle, and this would only serve to infuriate the Japanese even more. So the Japanese, now thoroughly pissed off, decide they are going to take every American on Wake Island, including the civilians that didn't even fight, and strip them all butt naked and tie them together in groups of 15 with telephone wire and march all 1,600 of them to the airfield. They then began assembling their crew-served machine guns, intending on executing everyone. They then stood there for 2 days on an airstrip, butt naked in the middle of the Pacific, at gunpoint, until the Japanese admiral came out and announced to them that the Emperor of Japan had decided to grace them with their lives. You see, the American media had made such a big deal of the first defense of Wake Island that the entire world was watching the events unfold now, and Japan knew that they couldn't get away with committing such a mass atrocity without attracting too much attention, so they decided they were going to actually have to abide by the rules of war and take prisoners. The majority of the Americans would then be loaded onto cargo ships and sent to prison camps either in Japan or Japanese-occupied China. And I'm happy to say that the overwhelming majority of them survived all of World War II in these POW camps and got to return home in 1945 and 1946.
Wow.
Upon returning home, they would find out that only months after their first defense of Wake Island, in 1942, Hollywood had turned their life events into a movie. But the problem with the movie was that nobody actually knew what happened at the Second Battle of Wake Island, so Hollywood just anticipated that everybody had died, and that's how the movie ended. Fast forward like 45 years later, there's a Wake Island reunion event where a journalist finally asks all the Marines what they thought of that movie when they first returned home. And without skipping a beat, this man in his 60s or 70s at this point chimes in and says, well, first of all, we didn't actually have a dog there. To which every other Marine began laughing, and it is hands down my favorite part of this story, because somehow that man lived through an entire lifetime worth of shit before he turned 25, and he's now made it into the twilight years of his life with his sense of humor intact and that innate burning desire to be a fucking smartass that every military member I've ever met has. And now, the story's gonna get weird. Whatever became of Wake Island itself, while it would remain under Japanese control for the duration of World War II, every time an American naval vessel drove past it, they would open fire on it with its guns, and they would routinely perform air raids on the island. Now, as fate would have it, one of those air raids on Wake Island would be the very first combat mission of a new pilot that joined the military at the ass end of World War II, and that pilot's name was George Bush. Don't worry, it's gonna get weirder. Returning now to the men as they were currently serving as prisoners of war, the vast majority were held in POW camps in Japanese-occupied China. Of all the men held there, a single Marine would escape, and he would make his way all the way to northern China, where he would find a group of Chinese communist soldiers, also not super big fans of the Japanese at this point in time, and they would decide, hey, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, I'm gonna make sure this Marine makes it home safe, and that's exactly what they did. And just as that Marine was about to set off on his final journey home, he would receive a visit from those soldiers' leader, and that leader would wish him well on his journey and gift him with several very nice Chinese rugs. That leader's name was Mao Zedong, the deadliest human of all time, credited with killing somewhere between 40 and 80 million people.
Wow.
Damn, dude. Holy shit.
War makes for some strange bedfellas.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend. But my friend, you just met the devil. Good God. Oh, man.
Oh.
And you got a rug.
Yeah.
from one of the most evil humans on the planet.
Oh,
Because
wow.
he definitely makes the list of your top psychos
Yeah,
of the
Chairman
world.
Mao. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah. Wow. Again, strange bedfellas.
Jesus.
I totally forgot to comment on that. The Wake Island movie. Like, how? First of all, that's a bit disrespectful, don't you think? To make a film about that without knowing all the facts about it
Well,
first.
there was no way. See what happens is the American public needed something. It
Mm,
needed something, especially during the war. There was no way to get the facts because they were all prisoners. So it's like you got it. You got to have that. You got to have that what's it called? Ah, shit. That that
I
it
just
just pumps you up as an American. What is it called? There's something for that, but I'm blanking on the name or the word for that. But like patriotism, it like tickles that, and it makes
yeah.
people fight more, sign up more. So I get that, but it's funny that those people that survived that watch it like, what the fuck? When did we all die?
Yeah. When was the dog around?
Oh man.
Mm-hmm. Shoot.
Yeah, the truth is literally stranger than fiction. And all of this happening, I have so many questions, but most important of all, the one question I want an answer to more than anything. What do you think that guy did with the rugs? I mean, for real, on one hand, kind of weird to keep them, but on the other hand, the rug didn't do anything, and it's a nice fucking rug. You know what I mean? Okay, this video is getting out of hand. I have to end it. In conclusion, after Pearl Harbor, the commander of the Japanese Navy, Admiral Yamamoto, would write in his personal diary, quote, "I fear all we have done is awoken a sleeping giant and filled him with terrible resolve." And I personally find it ironic that the first time that his men would come face to face with that terrible resolve, the sleeping giant that they awoken, would be 3 days later at Wake Island, where 450 Marines, 70 Navy corpsmen, and 400 blue-collar construction workers stood together and halted the most powerful Navy on the planet in their tracks for 16 days. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. The best way to support the channel is go buy some merch at thefatelectrician.com. Quackbang, out. I'm gonna be honest. I probably would have kept those fucking rugs.
What did you think of the movie Wake Island when you first saw it?
First thing, we didn't have a dog.
Yeah, that's number one.
And Brian Dunleavy, even though he was a good movie star, there was nothing real about the movie or whatever.
A lot of war bond drives occurred at the movie theaters. People would come to go see the movie. They'd be so pumped up with enthusiasm and patriotism, they'd exit the movie theater and there'd be war bond sales right there. And people would buy war bonds, and it helped the war effort tremendously.
All right, so you had you're right. I don't want to use the term propaganda, but
No,
it's
100%. That's exactly what it is.
propaganda.
Propaganda. That's the name for it. What you do with the propaganda is obviously that's where you get into the gray areas. But propaganda, that's what it is. You promote something like that,
Yeah.
and you establish some sort of fervor behind that ideology or movement. And we needed all the support going into that war, so it made sense. Accuracy wasn't high on their list during wartime.
They need to get something out.
Yeah,
Something
we needed
was better
something
than
to
nothing.
unify the people.
Get everyone behind a cause. Was
400 people can cause this much mayhem. We stood up to them. Let alone, no one ever said that we left them to die.
right.
Like,
I'm glad that they survived. They actually
Yeah.
survived those POW camps.
That's nuts, man. That's nuts. What a freaking tool bag. Surrendering while you guys are kicking ass.
That's what happens when the communication breaks down. Is
I would have,
nobody.
man. I would have shot him. Like, whoops, he caught a stray. Shut him up. Like, nuts, man.
You caught a stray. I respect.
And it's just like, God, we're on a roll. What the fuck are you doing, dude?
Oh.
And everyone knew what they signed up for. When they, I would have been protect the civilians, get the civilians somehow to safety. There's no safety. So we're in this sinking boat, and it's going to sink. It's bleak. The only thing they could do was just buy time and slowly die. But they did it in style, and they straight up kicked ass doing it. So
they did.
That's crazy. Would they kill 600? Nuts.
Compared to, I don't know.
Oh,
that's insane. And this gets overshadowed by Pearl Harbor. This is one of the first victories against the Japanese in retaliation for Pearl Harbor that we had. And why is it not talked about more?
Yeah, it should be taught right on the back end of Pearl Harbor. It should be like Pearl Harbor. We do, it's kind of like 3-day. I would say we dedicated probably 3 days to learning about Pearl Harbor. And then right after that should be Wake Island. It should be right following that.
Yeah,
Not anyway. It's our education system. They need to churn students out of it as quick as possible. Room for the next empty-minded kids that they need to fill with shit. So it's like
right. They need to churn out taxpayers.
It's a conveyor belt. So you're not learning nothing.
Right. Don't let schooling get in the way of your learning, people.
Yeah, pretty much. That's a good way to put it right there. But no, man, it's good. I love what he does. Every time he's giving us the stories that we don't hear about, unfortunately.
Yeah. I'm glad that y'all keep coming out for it.
Oh, yeah.
Because this is great. This is great.
I'm glad that we have this voice on our channel.
Yeah. And hope to keep him on for as long as y'all keep showing up. We'll keep churning them out. Yep.
It's hard for me not to binge it, dude, for real.
Right.
Dude, I'm just like, oh god, I want to watch all of them. But
yeah. This is why we do 2 a week as opposed to just 1 a week.
Yep.
Because guys, I'm with you there. I would binge all of them if we weren't doing this channel. But we'll do 2 a week to scratch that itch. How's that?
Guys, make sure to support the original content creator. Make sure you go over to his channel and watch.
Yo, poor Fat Electrician. In fact, Fat Electrician, if you're watching this, Nick, thank you for that comment on one of our previous videos.
Cheers.
Really appreciate
Cheers.
that. Yep. And I think that's pretty much it for us. Thank y'all for watching. Best way to support us is support our other channels. I have a music and food channel. Daniel has a music reaction podcast channel and a stories for kids channel too.
Yep.
Those are all linked in the description. And also consider supporting us on Patreon, dropping a super thanks, subscribing, and watching another video. And then what else after that, Dan?
Unplug and go do something legendary.
Exactly. And we'll see y'all next time.
Later, guys.
Fellas, we can be that mistake. Let's do this.